Hello guys, welcome to this new video. Now in this video I will be taking us through what is called PHP syntax. Now on the last video we talked about downloading VS Code and also downloading your local development environment setup, which we recommended XAMPP and yada yada yada. So but on this video we have to get started writing code, actual code. So what we'd want to do first is to test that the XAMPP we downloaded and installed is working. I didn't take us through the step of installing XAMPP or VS Code, and I hope you were able to. If you were able to, congratulations. If you weren't, please speak to me, ask questions in the comment section. So when you go to your browser and you just type localhost, you should see this up. If you do, it means you have XAMPP installed. If you don't, that means your installation has an issue. Please give me a thumbs up or a heads up, and then we'll find out how to figure the issue out together. All right, so when you download XAMPP, and if you try to go to localhost and it doesn't show, it's possibly because you need to start up the XAMPP control panel. And how you do it is when you install XAMPP, it comes with the XAMPP control panel. And when you click on it, it shows this guy. Usually this is always stopped. It's always like this. So you'd want to start Apache. And when it comes to the part where we work with MySQL, we're going to start that accordingly. Now, if you notice here, we have ports. We have port 80 and port 443. Port 80 usually indicates HTTP server, and port 443 usually indicate HTTPS server. And this doesn't necessarily have to be 80, and this doesn't necessarily have to be 443. It could be a different number you choose to set this to, but some ports in your laptop, on your PC, your PC network are reserved, and some ports are regarded as public ports, just so you know. But one of the most often ports used out there is port 80 or port 8000 and port 443 for HTTP and HTTPS respectively. All right, so I'm just going to leave XAMPP start up, and I just wanted to give that note. Now, one other place I'd want us to be is in XAMPP, so in the XAMPP folder. So I'll show us how to do this. Now, I'll go to this PC, I'll go to Windows, I'll go to XAMPP, I'll go to htdocs. Now, you notice this is the XAMPP folder, and it's called the htdocs. Now, all your PHP code you'll be writing, for the fact that you're using XAMPP, it's going to live under this particular folder, right? Say you want to start a new project, you create a folder and you call it new project, right? Or whatever fancy name you want to use. Now, this is just because it's in a development environment. When we go to production, things are quite different, but a little bit similar, right? So first I'd want us to do, like I've done here, is to create a folder called PHP lessons. And that's it. Now I'll show us one cool trick. So when I click on the PHP lessons folder and I hold the shift key and I'll right click, I'll see something called open in terminal. And so when I do this, if I type code dot and click on the enter key, it is going to open that folder in VS Code for me, as you can see right here. Now, that's one way. If you feel there's a lot of trouble to do, or you were unable to get command prompt open, please disregard this. But I'm going to do it one more time because it's cool. So hold the shift key, right click, click on open in terminal, and when the terminal opens, type code dot. Now this only happens if you have VS Code installed, just so you know. So if you don't have VS Code installed, sorry, no, but if you do, please feel free to enjoy. Now another way you could do this is to open this folder up in VS Code. So you right click and you'd sorry, you hold the shift key and right click and you see open with code, and yeah, that should open the folder. So one thing I want us to do is to create a new folder called PHP Syntax, right? And you'd see the folder was created here as well. So I'll come back to this place, and yes, most definitely close the other one to avoid distractions. So PHP Syntax, here we go. And one other thing that I want us to do is to create the new file. Click on new file. So when you right click on this new folder you created, you see create new file. But before then, I'll just give us a quick dive into VS Code and what it is about. I've done that before, but mostly one of the places you'll be visiting frequently is this Explorer section and also the code editor part. If you come to file, you see you can open new file, or you can open recent file. You could save a file, you know, save as in a new location. You could do auto save, you know, and configure it accordingly and all of those things. It also has terminal and the rest, but please, one of the best ways to figure this out is when you use them. When you use them more frequently, you get used to it. So PHP Syntax, create a new file called index.php, and I'll tell us why it's index. So PHP is an interpreter language, and so what that means is that naturally PHP doesn't go through the normal process or the backend languages does, you know, and not just PHP. I believe there are some interpreter languages as well. But what this means is PHP checks for your source code, it interprets the source code, and you know, gives this response out to the client. In normal programming convention, it takes the source code, passes the source code, compile the source code, and then it gives us the output. So PHP just interprets, and that's why it's referred to as a scripting language. PHP files has to start and end with the .php extension. So you see why I named this .php is because it's the way PHP wants us to be. And if you see, VS Code is so smart that it adds this PHP symbol at the end of our file. All right. So I'll show something real quick. So when we go to our browser and then we type PHP Syntax, PHP lessons, I think that was the first folder we created, /PHP Syntax, I believe. Let's see. Oh, PHP lessons, PHP sign. Oh, golly, I believe I can spell right. All right, so we see a blank page as compared to this. Now, this is a good sign. The fact that it's blank, don't worry. You'll learn to be happy. You'll see a different errors with time as a developer. Now, seeing a different error is a good thing because, you know, I want to call this an error. Seeing a different thing that you've been seeing when you try to do something is a good thing as a developer because, you know, you've passed the first hurdle, and don't worry, this would all make sense. So, PHP syntax, index.php. I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to start with open bracket or a square bracket, and I'm going to say add the question mark, and I'll say PHP. And I'm going to save this, and this would not impact anything on my page. But what this is that it is declaring, it is starting the first declaration of this file as a PHP file. All right, now I'm going to do something also. I'm going to say echo, and I'm going to say hello world. Now this hello world thing is quite boring to me, but it's almost one of the first should I say sentence or first word someone who's learning a new programming language should do, you know. And yeah, of course, just to keep that convention, I'm just going to keep it at hello world, yeah, with an exclamation sign. So I'm going to go to this, and I will refresh, and you see hello world. When you view the source code of this thing, you see that we don't have the PHP thing, the echo thing either we use, right? We don't have it wrapped around this. And that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, right? That it is being interpreted by PHP. Now, what is happening under the hood is XAMPP started PHP. XAMPP gave us Apache, as you can see here. Apache. Apache is the interface or the web HTTP server which we're using to open this PHP code as it would be in a website. Now, this localhost could be your let's say example.com kind of thing. Just picture that localhost as a domain, right? Now, it tries to interpret this code, and when it does, it strips this off so the browser recognizes what it should. Basically, the browser recognizes just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that's one thing we should know. Now, what happens when I remove this semi bracket? Sorry, what happens when I remove this semicolon? I'm sorry about that. And you'd see that there is a red squiggle here, and that's an indication that Visual Studio Code has a very good IntelliSense. So it's kind of tells us that, look, there is a problem. So one of your first things to note is that your code editor is your friend. It has a red squiggle here. It's trying to tell us there's an issue with this particular line of code. And if we override it, say unexpected end or file IntelliSense or whatever that means. I'm sorry, I'm not a grammarian. So I'm just gonna refresh this, and then we get our first error as our developer, which is pass error, syntax error, unexpected end of file, yada yada yada. And it also goes ahead to tell us the line this is happening. So that's on line 4, and you can see on the code editor this is line 4. All right, so this is it about this. You know, when you write a statement or syntax in PHP, you should have a semicolon to it, right? And that's one. Now, one other thing I'd like to do, I'm just going to do something real quick. I'm going to add an HTML syntax to our code, and this HTML syntax is the basic boilerplate for HTML. Now, what I did is that I pressed the exclamation key and I used the EMET abbreviation. And what that is press the exclamation key on your keyboard and press the tab key afterwards. It's going to generate this basic HTML boilerplate for you. And I'm just going to do this. Now, another thing you'll notice is that from the bottom of this file, we have squiggles for the body and HTML closing tag. And so you see it says expression expected, and unexpected and semicolon is expected, even though we have the semicolon right here. Now the problem is that Visual Studio Code might be intelligent, but generally it's trying to tell us this is common sense. Come on, why don't you close the PHP thing so I would know where the problem is happening from? You know, because it's kind of like, oh, this is an HTML document from the preceding thing. It feels this is a kind of like an HTML file, but it says, no, wait a minute, this is handling with the PHP. It's supposed to be an exclusive PHP file, and if it isn't, why don't you just close it for me just so I'd see? Now that's pretty much funny the way I explained it, but I hope you get the point. Now what this leads us is that there are times where you see an exclusive PHP file. I'll give an example is you don't have all of this HTML thing in it and it's an exclusive PHP file. And there are some times where you see PHP being embedded in an HTML file, right? So this is when PHP is being embedded in an HTML file. And now if I go to the browser and refresh, you see we still see the hello world. And if I view source, you see it doesn't interpret this HTML thing for us, not strip it as it did for this open bracket close bracket PHP. Now the point I'm trying to make is when you embed PHP in a file, right, be it HTML or whatever file you're working with, you make sure to put the closing tag. So I'll make this clearer for us so you understand what's happening. So you open this bracket, you close it, you put the question mark, sorry. To close it, you put this and this. And now this leads to what is called a shorthand PHP. So this is kind of like a shorthand PHP, but you need to install a compiler for this, so it's quite tricky. And most of the time, I think senior versions or newer versions of PHP supports the shorthand version of PHP, but yeah, of course, not all of them does. I'm just really going to do this real quick and see if a version of XAMPP does, and I'm going to reload, and you see it doesn't. Yeah, so it requires a compiler to do this shorthand version, but I hope you get the point. PHP could exist as a standalone file like this, and I could come here, load, and see if I embed, if it is a standalone file, this closing thing here is redundant, right? It is redundant. You don't need to put it, but if it is embedded, you definitely need to close it. So the interpreter recognizes where a PHP code starts and where it ends. All right, so this video is long enough. One other thing I'd like to show us in the next video is comments in PHP. All right, hope you were able to understand the first syntax of PHP, how the interpreter machine works, and how to create your first folder, how to access that folder. And we encountered this thing called echo just before I go. So echo is like a keyword, all right, and it's not case sensitive, so I could also say echo, but not, right, you see. Yeah, but not everything in PHP is not case sensitive, just so you know. If you put this PHP right here, if you are someone like myself who would wonder and you say you want to go, golly, you want to go PHP like this, come on bro, you're wrong. Don't do that, please. But yeah, in this stage of echo, yeah, we can do that or that, but let's just leave it this way. So I didn't go ahead to explain what echo is, but basically what echo is just outprinting an output on the screen for you. So whenever you want to output something, you use the word echo. And if I remove echo, guess what would happen? It would not show, because I'm not telling the interpreter to print this hello word to us. And we can have multiple of them. We could say hello word 2, hello word 3. Oops, save and go to the browser. Now, one other thing I'm doing behind the hood, when I leave this space and go check in the browser, I press Ctrl S to save this. So if you don't save, you would not see the latest update on the browser. So let's say I delete this, I did not save, I come here, refresh. Oops, sorry, my PHP, my Visual Studio Code have autosave. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to try this again. I removed autosave, and you see this dot right here indicates it's not saved yet. And so when I go here and then I refresh, you still see hello world 1, and when I save again, you see hello world 2, 3 would show now. So if you like the autosave thing, fine, go ahead with it. If you don't, you don't need it. All right, okay, so that's basically it for this video. I hope I was able to explain this concept. In the next video, we're going to talk about comments in PHP, and it's going to be a very short one. Now for this time, it's going to be long, and if you feel the video is too long, please bear with me. I just feel I want to touch everything there should be in PHP, and breaking this down for beginners. Yeah, so this is a beginner video one more time. If you're a professional, yeah, you might laugh around the way and concept I use in explaining this, but I'm trying to explain this in the most simplest concept possible for people who are not experienced in PHP that want to learn it. And yes, of course, it's going to be lengthy, and it's going to be me explaining some stuff in a funny way. Whereas if I'm speaking to a professional, I know the things to exempt and concept to exempt as well. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video. Bye-bye.